Om Shri Sai Ram. Tapovanam Parayanam, Chapter 11. Loving Mother Sai. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food, my life is my message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no season for love, no birth, no death. Baba. Love of 1,000 mothers. Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba devotes 3/4 of his precious time to his students. He feels that the future of the society rests solely on these innocent, clear-hearted children. He is all love for them. He tells them, "Look at me within your own selves. I look at myself in you. You are my life, my breath, and my very soul. You are all, every one of you, my form. When I love you, I love my own self. When you love yourselves, you are loving only me." Agony moves Bhagwan. Once Bhagwan was in Vrindavan with his students. He said, "When I am here, you are distracted and are not studying properly. If I go away to Puttaparthi, you will devote yourself to studies. I am leaving for Puttaparthi at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow." The students touched his feet and prayed, "Swami, please, Swami, stay here. We will study well." But Swami insisted on leaving. "Your parents entrusted you to my care. How can I see you running around me without studying? I must leave tomorrow." The next day was Monday. It was 8:30 a.m. In front of the Trai, Baba's white car was ready. The distressed students were also there with agony in their faces. Swami came down from his residence in the upper floor. The students humbly prayed and begged but did not succeed. Swami took his seat in the car and left. With hearts heavy, the children went back to their rooms in the hostel. Their minds were full of Swami. What they read could not enter their minds. The absence of Swami rendered the entire environment colorless, lifeless, listless, dark and silent. Every student quietly kept to his own room. No word, no greeting, no conversation, no pleasure, nothing but gloom. Barely 15 minutes passed when suddenly a student shouted, "Swami is back! Swami is back!" The rest of the students thought that he was perhaps in delusion. More than the others, he must have imagined a car arriving. But a few curious fellows peeped out of their windows. There, Swami's car was really entering the ashram precincts. A couple of students were indeed running behind it. That was enough. All the students ran like deer on wings. By the time Swami alighted from his vehicle, they stood around it. Surprise on one side and delight on the other were choking them. As Swami entered the went up the staircase, students were mutely standing below, staring at each other. What has happened? Why has Swami returned? Nobody knew. Then Swami spoke to them. "A mere mention that I am leaving creates so much commotion and disturbance. Everything gets upset. In the midst of all this chaos, I forgot to take the keys, so I came back to them." What is that? Can Swami forget keys? The hearts of the children were full with emotion and immeasurable happiness. Not a single eye remained dry. Silence ruled everywhere. But then, they feared that Swami might get hold of his keys, after all, and go away. One of the students hesitatingly asked, "Swami, shall we put things back in the car?" Pretending to show anger, which nobody could see, was not there. Swami said, "No, I will leave in the evening." But the students, clever as they were, did not fail to see the bubbling smile behind Swami's show of anger. They all cried with one voice, "Swami, Swami, please stay here, Swami." Swami turned to them and said, "Look, your sincere, transparent distress has dragged me back. If you want me to stay here, you should work hard on your studies. Then I assure you, I will stay here. Get busy now with your studies." Spirituality connotes agonizing for God, intense yearning for God, and undergoing suffering and distress in the quest for God. The flower of love. Once Swami paid a visit to Dharmakshetra in Mumbai. Teachers and students of Balavikas there made excellent arrangements to welcome him. Students sat in orderly rows, each of them holding a rose to be offered to Swami. Their faces were glowing in happy anticipation. There was a small child among them. He was too young to be admitted to the Balavikas organization. He was nevertheless attending classes along with other members. He had also learned several shlokas by heart. As he was too young to be seated in the front row, The teacher made him sit in a rear row. He was also not given a rose to hold. The little one's pain at being discriminated showed in his morose face. As he was keen to present a flower to Swami, just like others, he requested some of them for a rose, but received none. Swami arrived on the dot. He walked along the boys who were holding up flowers to him. He gently touched each flower offered to him and blessed every student. The little child was watching each step and each gesture by Swami as he slowly made his way along. Quietly he slipped himself into the front row. Swami was now nearing him. Just at that moment, the child chanced to see in front of him a tiny flower of grass. He snatched it up and held it in his hand. When Swami arrived right in front of him, he raised his little hands and made his loving but uncommon offering to Bhagwan. Swami smiled sweetly, accepted the simple offering from child, and softly pressed his tender fingers. In appreciation of that little one's effort, gesture, Swami patted him affectionately and also spoke a few words to him. While Swami merely touched the fine roses offered by others, he carried in his hand the humble grass flower the little child so lovingly offered. The meetings that followed lasted 3 hours. After they ended, Swami came out and blessed those gathered there. But the little grass flower of love was still in Bhagwan's hand, as fresh as it was 3 hours back. Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai notices the yearning and distress lying deep in the heart of a devotee and responds to it. Shed a tear for me. This happened in 1976. Swami was in Vrindavan. Several engineers were moving all over the place holding some construction plans in their hands. Sri Satya Sai came out to give darshan to the assembled gathering. To the students crowded around him, he said, "My dear boys, I am having a new hostel constructed for you. It will be very roomy and comfortable. It will come up at a little distance away at the back of your college building." Speaking for all of them, one of the boys said, "Swami, we are quite comfortable here, quite satisfied and happy. We do not want a new hostel, Swami. This Vrindavan is our home," Swami explained. "My dear boys, if you consider Vrindavan as your home, that's well and good, and I am happy that you are adjusting yourself to it and feeling satisfied. All the same, I am unable to bear the sight of you little boys cramped for space. It is my duty to ensure your comfort. Foundation stone for the new hostel building will be laid on the coming Thursday." Having said this, he moved ahead towards this open space beyond the portico to bless those awaiting for his darshan. The foundation stone laying ceremony was to take place hardly 48 hours later. Engineers were very busy, but the students remained dissatisfied. They did not know what to do. When Baba visited the hostel on the next day, a boy, the youngest of them all, placed a letter in Baba's hand. He read it through and lovingly smiled at the little fellow. Then he sat on his throne and sent for the warden. When he presented himself, Swami gave the letter to him and asked him to be read aloud. It read as follows: "Dearest Sai Mother, our humblest salutations to your lotus feet. Are you displeased with us? Are we disturbing the silence that is most dear to you? Are we violating the code of discipline and behaving without due restraint? It must be. Otherwise, why would you try to send us away from the beautiful precincts of Vrindavan? Why do you insist that a new hostel for us should be built at a far-off location? Vrindavan is a gracious place. It has brought your sweet and protective love and care very close to us. Even gods would desire to enjoy such love. With heartfelt love and affection. P.S. If you are determined at any rate to build the hostel to a far-off location, kindly build also a new residence for you and stay close to us." As the warden finished reading, there was not a single boy without tears. In one voice they cried, "Swami, please accept our request." Bhagwan's heart melted at the sight. He immediately sent for the chief engineer and conveyed the student's wish. He demurred. These plans have all been drawn with extreme care, and not much time is left for laying the foundation stone too. But the boys told him with one voice that only Vrindavan should be their home. Seeing the mood of the boys, Swami indicated to their chief engineer to have the plans redrawn. Fresh plans were made, locating the new hostel within the Vrindavan complex. On hearing the exciting news, The children were in ecstasy. On the appointed day, when Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai was about to light the lamp of Arati, a boy said, "Swami, you are doing so much for our sake, but we have nothing to offer to you." Swami replied, "Happy tears are trickling down your tender cheeks. That is all I want. Shed a tear for me. What I desire most is only your happiness." That noble structure, which stands now in Vrindavan complex, is sweet monument enduring for all time to Baba's immense love for children. In 1976, a number of deer from adjoining forests of Mundamalai strayed into Vrindavan. A nice place opposite to the Trai was provided for them. Swami fed them with apples and looked after them with love. One day, as Swami has emerged out of the Trai to give darshan, students ran to him. The same moment in the garden opposite deer, two wanted to close to Swami and moved up to him, near the wire mesh that stood around the garden. Baba drew attention of a devotee standing by to the enchanting scene comprised of the loving children and the equally loving deer. He said, "These are the two-legged deer and those are the four-legged deer. Both are dear to me." Flew driven away. Influenza once spread like wildfire in the higher secondary school in Prashanthilayam. Nearly 200 students were affected. After the evening bhajan concluded, Swami asked Dr. Alreja to pay a visit to the school. The doctor found about 200 students suffering from high temperature, cough and vomiting. The infection seemed to be beyond control. It was then 8 p.m. As the doctor made his way back to his room. He thought that as Swami's room would be closed at the hour, he would report to him next morning. At 8:30 p.m., a volunteer came to tell him that Swami was waiting for him. The doctor hurried into Swami's presence. Baba asked him, "I was waiting for you. Why have you not come to me immediately?" The doctor replied, "Swami, by the time I returned, it was 8 p.m. I thought that your door would be closed by that hour. About 200 students are suffering from the flu. I find it impossible to arrest its spread. I am afraid at this stage no medicine can help. Only you can save them." Next morning, Baba visited the school and the hospital. He walked through every single veranda and classroom. He went up to the roof also, despite the principal's protestations that it was not properly cleaned. Swami then called for a stainless steel bucket filled with water. He materialized vibhuti in immense quantities and poured it into the water. He asked one of the teachers to carry the bucket around and serve the vibhuti water to every teacher and every student. The disease spread no further from then on. Within the space of 4 days, every single patient recovered fully. Swami's medical treatment is amazing as inscrutable. Supremacy of spiritual learning. What should we pray to God for? Not for worldly wealth and enjoyment, not for material things and property, but for God Himself. Every blessing comes by itself in the wake of God. The learning that makes man yearn for God is known as spiritual learning. Swami once described how Yashoda went after her prankster child Krishna. Yashoda, he said, held a lump of butter in one hand while she showed it to Krishna with a view to enticing him. She kept the other hand behind her back, holding a stick. When the little child drew near for butter, she would grasp him and deal a couple of strokes with the stick. That was her way of putting her errant child straight. Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai reaches for us exactly in the same way with worldly learning in his open hands, but holds spiritual learning in the other hand hidden. Boys and girls come eagerly seeking admission into these educational institutions, colleges and university. Swami receives them and imparts spiritual learning along with worldly learning. Even an ordinary individual is graduated, processed and refined in this manner. Man becomes truly wise in course of time. Swami's indescribable love makes it possible. In Baba's seats of learning, children are educated from kindergarten level to postgraduate level absolutely free of charge. MBA, MFM, MTech courses have also been introduced in the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, a deemed university. These are in addition to normal courses at bachelor's level in arts, science and commerce, and master's level courses in arts and sciences Facilities are available for doctoral studies as well. A number of big, neat, roomy and airy buildings have been built. A state-of-the-art planetarium costing crores of rupees had been installed. In November 2001, a new music college was also opened on the university campus. These are all tokens of Baba's boundless love for children. Side by side with these symbols of worldly concern, Baba ensures that students receive spiritual learning too. My children are my entire property. On 22nd November 1981, the day the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning was inaugurated, Swami addressed the students. He said, "Students should be the roots from which would grow trees of peace and security for the world. My purpose is to water those roots. I am dedicating myself in every way to students. I have immense faith in them. You ask anyone what properties Sai Baba holds in his name, you will be told, oh, he has so many buildings, so much land and so on. All those possessions amount to nothing. My sole property is nothing but my children." There are many who are unable to understand this simple truth. Such unfortunate persons who cannot imagine even a single mother's love can never gauge the love of 1,000 mothers. The most sublime quality of Sri Satya Sai is limitless patience. He says, "Countless persons criticize me. There are many who call me by all sorts of names. All kinds of wild things are written about me. In newspapers, thousands of pamphlets are published against me. I have only one answer to all of them: my smile. These are all but vicious reactions to what is indisputably good. Stones are hurled only at fruit-bearing trees. Some people are envious and intolerant by nature. As more and more Satya Sai organizations blossom, Satya Sai universities grow, their jealousies too grows by leaps and bounds. They fabricate more false stories, accusations and gossips. Even children are dragged into these malicious activities. Paramahamsa Swarupulara, O embodiments of supreme divinity, what to say of these small-minded persons? Even if the whole world unites against me, no harm comes to me. My heart is always pure. I have no selfish ends. I have nothing of my own. This is my truth. Only criminals are beset with fear. Why should a lion doing no wrong be afraid? Whatever I do is for the welfare of the world. Jagat Kalyan, not for myself. I am aware of this irresistible truth, hence I am ever in bliss, the unbreakable bliss. Frolicsome God. In 1983, students of Satya Sai College arranged a science exhibition in the Kalyana Mandapam in Vrindavan. Sri Govind Narayan, the governor of Karnataka, then governor of Karnataka, was visiting Vrindavan for Swami's darshan. Baba brought him along to see the exhibition. On the show were several models, scientific devices and artifacts made by students. One of the items was a piece of alarm equipment. A ray of light proceeds from one end to the other, and if a hand is placed in between, an alarm rings. As Swami went round and reached that equipment, the student who had devised it told him, "Swami, please put your hand here," and the alarm rings. Swami did so, but there was no sound. The student got perplexed. He said, "Just a moment, Swami. Something seems to have gone wrong. I will set it right." He tinkered with it a little, put his hand between the two ends, and sure enough, the alarm rang. Confident now, the student invited Swami to insert his hand. He did so, but again the alarm did not ring. The student got thoroughly confused by now and mumbled something about the equipment needing another repair. Then Swami told him, "It needs no repair. I am not that kind of a thief for whom you have designed this." So quite rightly, the alarm did not ring. He moved on. Science is not capable of reaching Swami. He transcends science. Tolerance. Many years back, students in the primary school in Puttaparthi used to take their daily morning bath in cold water. Swami felt sad and thought, "Parents of these tender young children left them in my care because of their immense trust in me. Poor fellows, they have only cold water to bathe in every day." That thought soon led to the provision of solar heaters, which heat water using sun rays. In no time, they were installed in the hostel. Students, teachers, and the principal of the school were very pleased. They prayed to Swami to inaugurate the solar heating system, and he agreed. Arrangements for the inauguration were soon completed. The equipment was connected to a tap by a rubber tube. When Swami arrives and turns the tap, hot water would flow into a bucket placed below. They did not have to wait long. Swami arrived and he turned the tap. Unfortunately, the rubber tube got detached just at the moment, and there was a burst of hot water on Swami's face and his garments. That sudden and unforeseen mishap shocked everyone. There was embarrassed silence all around. Not a hand moved to correct the situation as the onlookers stood petrified. Swami understood their misery. He laughed aloud to break the spell and said, "Look, the inaugural bath has been taken by me." Swami's laughter and pleasant remarks brought relief to everyone. Their hearts became light and they could breathe easily. Everyone joined Swami's laughter. Baba is ever merciful. He knows no anger. My life is my message, he says. It is a message of love, compassion, and mercy. There is no place for anger. Benefit from closeness to Baba. Once, Swami was in Kodaikanal sitting in his room. He was looking out at the crowds, waiting outside for his darshan. Several students were sitting at his feet around him. Swami told them, "Do you realize how fortunate you are? Thousands are waiting outside for me. Here you are, enjoying the privilege of serving at my feet. But you do not know how fortunate and lucky you are. I am giving you this opportunity so that you will be close to me. If I feel like it, I can walk across the sky from one side to other. If only I did that, the whole world would be at my feet. Several lakhs of devotees would swarm to me. But at that time, not one of you would have the opportunity of being so close to me. Armed guards would always surround me for my protection. I assure you, those days are not far off. Believe me, a day will come when you will barely be able to spot a tiny red flash of my red robes from a long distance, that too with a great effort. You will realize Swami's glory. When I walk across the sky from one end to the other, so as of now, try to derive benefit from every single moment of your closeness to Swami." On one occasion, a program of sports was organized in Hillview Stadium. Inaugurating the games, Swami released 2 white pigeons. As the games were underway, Swami and some distinguished guests watched from the dais. After some time, they noticed the same pigeons earlier released flying in the sky across the dais. Swami observed, "Look at those birds. They have been with us for a long time. Therefore, they have become incapable of adjusting themselves to the outside world, although they have been set free." No doubt Swami was then referring only to those 2 pigeons, but what he said then applies to all his dear students and devotees. Om Shri Satya Sai ParabrahmaNe Namaha. Shanti Shanti Shantihi. End of chapter 11.
साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वः प्रचोदयात्।